Hi, I'm Kate Carter-Evans. Thank you for joining me today for the SHOKAY Knitting video series. Today I'm going to show you how to make the knit stitch. So the knit stitch is the foundation of all knitting, and there are 4 parts to making each stitch. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take your needle and you're going to put it through one of the loops from your cast on. In this case, I've cast on 10 stitches, so my first stitch is this one on the far right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle and I'm putting it in from front to back, and also from left to right. It's good on your first stitch if your needles are fairly close to one another. So then for the second part of the stitch, you take your yarn, you wrap it around the needle, you take the loop through the stitch, and then you take the completed stitch off. So you're coming in from left to right and front to back. You're taking your yarn around, you're pulling your yarn through and taking the stitch off. So we're going in, around, through, and off. In, around, through, and off. And now you've completed a row. So in order to go back the other direction, you just turn the needle so that your yarn is again on the right side. And then when you want to get started, you just take that first stitch and again, you just go in, around, through, and off. This is a good time to talk about how to hold your yarn. Basically, there's many different hand positions that you can use to hold your yarn. This is the one that works best for me. And all of the different methods, what they have in common is that they allow you to keep even tension on the yarn, and so you don't have to drop it and pick it up. It's really tempting when you first start knitting to pick the yarn up and drop it as you go along. And what this does is it means that you have no control over the tension on the yarn, and so your loops can end up getting really, really big. You can have it be tight in some places and loose in others, and it also really slows you down. So even though it is pretty tricky, I recommend teaching yourself one of the tensioning methods. So the one that I'm going to show you today, the way that I like to describe this to people is that if you make the barking dog from Shadow Puppets, if this finger represents the dog's lower jaw, you just want to take that yarn and bite it. And then you tuck your whole hand underneath it so the yarn ends up wrapped around your pinky. I like to have the yarn kind of around the first knuckle, and then it goes over the back of my index finger. When I want to release yarn so that I can pick it up and knit with it, all I have to do is just relax my fingers slightly, and then the yarn scooches itself up. And then I'm using my index finger for the fine control on the tension of the yarn that's going into my stitches. And here we're getting to that part where I was picking it up and dropping it. And you can see that the stitches there are quite a bit more uneven. But yeah, this is what you get from the picking up and the dropping. So yes, try a tension method. It really will yield a better result. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the difference between English and continental knitting, which is also the difference between picking and throwing your yarn. What I've been doing up to this point is with the right hand, you can see how the yarn kind of needs to get around that back needle. This is throwing. This is the English method. And if you're right-handed, this can be a really good place to start. If, however, you are a lefty or you're really interested in being able to knit quickly, I recommend the continental method. Again, same barking dog. Grab the yarn just with your left hand. And then this time, rather than throwing the yarn around the needle, you use the needle to pick the yarn up and put it through the stitch. It's the same stitch mechanics of in, around, through, and off. But you're just picking the yarn up, so there's a little bit less motion required. So there you have it, knitting with the right hand and the left hand, picking and throwing. The knit stitch is a wonderful place to begin. The last thing I want to mention is that when you're doing all of your rows in knit stitch, the resulting pattern is called garter stitch.